Imani Fields stood outside conference room 4B, resume in hand. Her navy blue suit was tailored perfectly. Her hair, natural, braided into a crown that spoke volumes before she even said a word. She had studied the company inside out, knew their top clients, had a 3-minute pitch ready if needed, and a 10-year plan if they asked for vision. She wasn't nervous. She was ready. Inside the glass-walled room, 3 executives sat in waiting, all white, all mid-40s, all with identical smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. A woman from HR opened the door. "You must be Imani. Please come in." Imani smiled, warm, firm, unbothered. "Thank you, it's a pleasure." The interview began like most do, questions about past experience, campaigns she'd led, how she handled deadlines, how she fit into company culture. Imani answered with ease, spoke of her years in media, her degree in digital branding, the time she turned a failing campaign around in 6 weeks flat. She saw the glances, saw the way the male exec scribbled confident in the margin after she answered with authority. Then came the coded question. "Do you see yourself adapting to the type of environment we've built here?" Imani smiled. "If by that you mean a space driven by excellence, integrity, and innovation, I don't just see myself adapting, I see myself leading." The room went quiet for a second too long. Then came the polite smiles again. The interview ended. Thank yous were exchanged. Hands were shaken. Imani left with her head high. She knew she'd nailed it. But as the door shut behind her, she also knew that feeling, that shift in the air, that silent judgment, the way they looked at her, not as a risk, but as something they didn't quite know where to place. 2 days later, the email came. Subject, position update. Thank you for your time. After careful consideration, we've decided to move forward with another candidate who more closely aligns with our team culture. We wish you all the best. Imani stared at the screen, not angry, not surprised, but tired. Culture fit. The phrase, Black professionals learn to decode by year 2 of their careers. It rarely meant skills. It always meant something else. Later that week, she ran into a former colleague, now working inside the company. They chatted briefly. Then the friend leaned in and whispered, "Off the record?" Someone in the room said, "You were too black for the job." Imani froze, then smiled, a small, sharp, dangerous smile. Good, because I'd never want to be just black enough for people like that. That night, she sat at her kitchen table, laptop, and a notebook beside it, vision clear. She drew a line across the top of the page, wrote 3 words underneath, "Start my own." Because if they wouldn't give her a seat at the table, she'd build the whole damn room. Music fades in, bold piano, soft but steady percussion. The sound of something real beginning. Voiceover whisper. They didn't see her value, but that didn't stop her from becoming the standard. Imani didn't waste time. Within 48 hours, she had created a folder on her laptop titled Blueprint Media Group. Inside, a mission statement, a list of names she wanted to hire someday, and a single line at the top of the document, where stories start with truth, not tone. The rejections didn't crush her. They clarified her. She didn't want to fit in anymore. She wanted to stand out so unapologetically that no one would ever ask her to shrink again. She reached out to former classmates, a photographer she admired, a freelance web designer who'd been overlooked for years, a Latina strategist who once said, "I always feel like the only one in the room." Imani replied, "Let's build a new room." Within a month, Blueprint Media Group was real. Not big, not loud, but real. A tiny studio space on the edge of downtown, wobbly chairs, secondhand desk, sticky notes everywhere. But the energy? Electric. The first clients were small, local bakery, nonprofit needing a logo, a hair care startup run out of someone's garage. Imani treated each one like it was Nike. Deadlines met, ideas bold, results loud. Soon, whispers started. Who did that campaign? Where'd that ad come from? Have you heard of Blueprint? Then came the email from a marketing exec at a major cosmetics brand. One of the big ones. They wanted a pitch. We're looking to connect with Gen Z, specifically Black and Latinx women. We want authenticity. We want edge. Imani read it twice, then laughed. Because now the very companies that once said she was too much needed everything she was. She got to work, pulled her team in, created a concept in 48 hours. Not a focus group, a mirror. Not tokenism, real voices, real power, real representation. They sent the pitch, held their breath. A week passed. Then came the reply. We loved it, let's go. The contract, 6 figures. Enough to expand, hire more talent, move into a real office. The first check hit the account. Imani stared at it, then said 3 words out loud just for herself. I did this. She walked into her old apartment. Same table where she'd written Start My Own. She crossed it out, wrote something new. Now watch me grow. Music builds. Rich piano, underpinned by confident strings. A pulse of something rising from below. Voiceover whisper. They said she was too much, but the only thing she was too much for was their limitations. 6 months later, Blueprint Media Group wasn't a startup anymore, it was a force. The studio had moved into a new space. Open floors, exposed brick, a mural on the back wall that read, We don't do safe, we do real. The team had grown too. What started with 4 was now 13. Black, brown, queer, first-gen, neurodiverse. No one had to code switch here. No one had to tone it down. You came as you were, and created what the world didn't know it needed. Imani didn't just lead, she amplified. She didn't just give opportunities. She gave oxygen to people who had spent years holding their breath in rooms that weren't made for them. One Monday morning, her assistant walked in, eyes wide. You're gonna want to see this. She handed Imani a printed email. The logo at the top, Axis and Gray Media. The same company that once told her, not the right culture fit. Imani raised an eyebrow. Read the message. We're looking to relaunch our global branding and expand outreach into underserved demographics. We've been following your work with Blueprint Media. Would love to schedule a call and explore possible partnership. Imani stared at it, smiled, then whispered to herself, Now you're ready for my culture. She didn't respond immediately. She let them wait. She let them wonder, because power isn't always in what you say. Sometimes, it's in when you choose to speak. That week, she gave a talk at a local university, room full of media students. One raised her hand. How did you know it would work? Imani paused. I didn't, but I knew pretending to be less than I am definitely wouldn't. By Friday, Axis and Gray followed up again. This time, they asked if she'd be open to an executive leadership role. We're restructuring, looking for someone with bold vision to lead North American operations. Imani sat in her office, leaned back in her chair, stared out the window, then picked up her phone and said, Let's schedule the meeting. Music fades in, quiet, slow-building piano layered with low strings and a distant pulse. Voiceover whisper. They once closed the door in her face. Now they were begging her to hold the keys. Imani hadn't stepped inside the offices of Axis and Gray Media in over a year. Not since the interview. Not since the email. Not since she was told, in so many words, that she wasn't a cultural fit. But today, she wasn't there to interview. She wasn't there to impress. She was there to listen to their offer. She stepped into the executive boardroom like she owned the floor, because at this point, she might as well. The same HR director who once blinked too long at her resume now stood to shake her hand. Imani, so glad you could make it. Imani returned a small smile. Pleasure. But inside, she felt the shift. This wasn't validation. This was leverage. They got down to business. We've been impressed with your work, said the CMO. Blueprint's voice is disruptive, sharp, and speaks directly to audiences we've struggled to reach. Imani listened, nodded, didn't flinch. We're rebranding North America, another exec added, and we think your leadership could be the difference between relevance and irrelevance. Then came the offer. Executive Creative Director full, Leadership authority over the U.S. team multi-seven-figure compensation stock equity. Full public announcement. Imani didn't say yes. Not yet. Instead, she asked one question. Before we talk numbers, let's talk culture. Silence. One exec shifted in his chair. She continued. A year ago, I sat in this building and was told, indirectly, that I didn't fit. That my presence, my voice, my blackness was too much. The room froze. Someone coughed quietly. Imani leaned in. Now you want my leadership? That's fine, but it's going to come with my identity, in full color. No dimming, no reshaping, no erasing. So the question isn't, do you want me here? The question is, are you finally ready for what I bring? The chief executive cleared his throat. Ms. Field, we are. Imani stood, extended her hand. Then let's talk terms. Music swells. Slow-burning piano and strings, steady and grounded. Voiceover whisper. They called her too much. But now, too much was exactly what they needed. 2 months later, the skyline had changed, but not as much as the titles. On the glass wall of the corner office now read, Imani Fields, Executive Creative Director, North America. Axis and Gray Media. She stood in that space alone for a moment, looking out the window. Same city, same buildings. But this time, she wasn't looking up at them. She was above them. That morning, a department-wide meeting had been scheduled. Every creative manager, every strategist, every exec who once questioned her presence, including those from the interview room. The ones who didn't even bother to remember her name the first time around. She walked into the boardroom, not with swagger, but with authority. She didn't need to take space. The room made space for her. Everyone stood. She gestured for them to sit. Then she started speaking. Some of you remember me. Most of you don't. A year ago, I sat in this building, across this very table. I interviewed for a role I was qualified for, and I was told I wasn't a fit. A few glances, a few shifting bodies, but no one interrupted. I don't bring this up to shame anyone. I bring it up because ignoring it would be a betrayal to every person who looks like me and still walks into rooms wondering if they're too much. A pin could drop. Imani continued, if I am now a fit, it's not because I changed. It's because you did. Silence. Then someone in the back clapped. Then another. Then the room. Not performative. Just respect finally catching up. After the meeting, a former senior manager approached her. The same man who once said during her first interview, "Do you think your style is too bold for our clients?" Now, he said, you said some things I needed to hear. You're going to be good at this, Imani nodded. I already am. She walked back to her office, closed the door, sat down, took a breath, then opened her laptop. The first thing she did, she drafted a new internal policy. Diversity is not decoration, it's direction, and it starts now. Music swells, slow, grounded and fierce, the sound of ownership, the sound of legacy beginning, voiceover, whisper. She didn't just return for the title, she came back to rebuild the room. Monday morning, the office buzzed with post-announcement energy. Some were excited, others nervous. Because that week a new org chart had gone live, and suddenly, names had shifted, titles had changed, and a few familiar faces now had a new boss. At 3 a.m., Imani walked into the strategy pod on the 11th floor, clipboard in hand, focus in her eyes, confidence in her step. Karen, the senior project lead, stood up, eyes wide. You're the new exec? You're Imani? Imani nodded. We met before. Karen paused. Her voice dropped. You interviewed with us last year. Imani smiled. And now I lead your division. Behind her, a man turned from his monitor, Alex, another name from that old interview panel. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. His eyes said it all. She held the silence. Then, calmly said, Let's be clear. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for results. Karen looked down. Alex walked away. A few newer staffers whispered to each other. That's her? She's the one they called too black. Imani kept walking, because she had meetings to run, budgets to realign, a culture to rebuild from the foundation up. Later that afternoon, she held a private meeting, just with the executive team. She stood before them and said, "I'm not here to shame the past, but I won't ignore it either. I know what was said, I know what was meant, and I know who said it." The room froze. Some faces went pale. Imani continued, "I won't call you out, because the world already did. But what I will do is lead this place forward, with clarity, with equity, with fire." She clicked her remote. A new presentation lit up the screen. Initiative 1, Internal Culture Audit. Initiative 2, Blind Hiring Reforms. Initiative 3, Mentorship for First Gen. Talent, and the last slide, a photo of her team at Blueprint Media, captioned, "This is what happens when people are given space to thrive, not shrink." Imani looked up. Any questions? No one raised a hand. Music builds, slow, deliberate, laced with conviction. Voiceover, whisper. They remembered her too late, but now she was unforgettable, for all the right reasons. It didn't take long for people to notice, not just that Imani was in charge, but that the energy of the place was changing. The Monday after her team meeting, she rolled out her first initiative, real representation, real results. A 12-month mentorship track for employees from marginalized backgrounds. Not performative, not just diversity numbers, actual funding, actual visibility, actual power. She sat down with every department head, not to dictate, to ask. What's broken? What's been silenced? What needs rebuilding? Some were honest, some were cautious, but eventually voices emerged. Stories came out. A Muslim designer whose ideas were always labeled too ethnic. A plus-size creative who was constantly assigned only fashion briefs for body-positive brands. A queer copywriter whose name kept getting left off pitch decks. Imani didn't just listen. She documented, she responded, she elevated. She didn't erase anyone. She just made it very clear. If your leadership depends on silence, you won't last long. Here, Karen, the project lead who once stood in her way, began attending the inclusion meetings. Quiet at first. But eventually, she spoke. I didn't know how much space I was taking because I never had to think about anyone else trying to breathe in it. Imani didn't gloat. She nodded. Awareness is the start. But what you do next, that's what defines you. One morning, a junior graphic designer named Zuri came into her office. Young, smart, hair dyed electric blue. She looked nervous. I just wanted to say, "This is the first job I've had where I don't feel like I have to shrink." Imani smiled. Good. Now go create something that takes up space. That afternoon, the CEO called. The board's impressed. They've never seen this division move so fast. You've increased output by 30%, and employee satisfaction is through the roof. Imani smiled. When people feel seen, they don't need motivation. They bring their whole selves to the table. Music begins to build. Warm, proud, steady. The sound of a system finally shifting. Voiceover whisper. She wasn't just hired to lead. She was called to transform. And in doing so, she made space for everyone they once pushed. Out. It was Friday morning. Imani stood at the front of the company's main event space. Not a boardroom, not a pitch deck. Just her and everyone. The company was hosting its annual Vision Forward meeting, but this year, the room was full. Not because people were told to show up, but because they wanted to hear what she had to say. She took the mic. No teleprompter, just one note card in her hand, never looked at once. She started. A year ago, I walked into this building as a candidate. I sat across from some of you. I wore my best suit. I gave my best answers. And I was told, she paused. The room leaned in. That I wasn't the right fit. That I wasn't what the brand looked like. A few faces stiffened. Some glanced down. Imani continued. Off the record, someone in that room, Someone in this room called me too black for the job. Dead silence, no coughs, no shifting, just weight and truth. That day, I walked out with no title, no offer, no validation. But I did walk out with something bigger. She let that breathe, then added, I walked out with my self-respect. And I built a company that didn't ask me to tone it down, it asked me to turn it up. Soft claps began, but Imani raised her hand. Not yet. I didn't come back to embarrass anyone, I came back to lead. Not just with strategy, but with memory. She looked around the room, not with anger, but with clarity. This isn't a call-out, it's a call forward. Now the applause came, strong, long, no one forced it, it just happened. Afterward, several employees lined up to speak to her, some of them the same people who once dismissed her. One woman, eyes wet, whispered, I was in that meeting a year ago. I didn't say those words, but I didn't say anything to stop them either, I'm sorry. Imani held her hand. Silence is normal, but it's never neutral. Thank you for showing up now. That moment would go viral. A clip of her saying, this isn't a call out, it's a call forward. Would hit 1 million views by the end of the week. But Imani didn't care about the views. She cared about the voices. Music rises, emotional, truthful, grounded in grace. Voiceover whisper. They called her too black for the job. But now she's the reason others finally see themselves in the job. Weeks after the Vision Forward meeting, Imani started something new. The Elevate program, a paid internship designed specifically for first-generation college students and young creatives from underrepresented backgrounds, not token slots. Not unpaid exposure, real opportunities, real mentorship, real chances to rise. One Thursday afternoon, Imani met with the first round of applicants. 12 of them, young, brilliant, nervous, but hungry. She walked into the room, no slides. No intro video, just her. Let me be clear, she said, looking around the table. You're not here to impress me. You're here because I see something in you that's already impressive. The tension broke. They smiled. One girl in the back raised her hand. Do you ever feel like you still have to prove yourself? Imani didn't hesitate. Every room, every meeting, even now. She paused, then added, but I don't shrink anymore. I've spent too long folding myself in half just to fit. Now, I stand. And if the room isn't big enough, I bring a hammer. The interns laughed, but they understood, because they'd felt it too. That quiet pressure, that expectation to soften, to adjust, to make everyone else comfortable with who you are. Later that day, one intern, Jaya, a soft-spoken design student, lingered after everyone left. She looked at Imani like someone looking at the future version of themselves. You're the first black woman I've ever seen in a room like this, who didn't have to apologize for being here. Imani smiled. That's because I stopped asking for permission. She walked Jaya to the elevator. Before the doors closed, Imani said, one day you're going to walk into a room like this, and someone will say, she reminds me of Imani Fields. Jaya smiled. Or maybe they'll say Imani Fields reminds them of me. The elevator doors slid shut, and in that moment, Imani knew. She hadn't just made it. She had multiplied it. Music swells, hopeful, bold, full of motion. Voice over whisper. They kept her out of the room. So she built a door. Now, she's holding it open for the next generation. It was Tuesday. Imani sat at the head of the conference table. Another round of interviews, another slate of applicants. But this time, she wasn't on the other side of the table hoping to be enough. She was the table. The final candidate of the day walked in, a young black woman, hair pulled back, eyes wide, blazer slightly wrinkled, but she wore it like armor. She looked around nervously, then at Imani, then quickly looked away. Imani stood, extended her hand. I'm Imani. Thanks for coming in. The young woman shook her hand. Voice. Quiet. I've heard so much about you. Honestly, I wasn't sure I should even apply. Imani raised an eyebrow. Why not? She hesitated, then said, I've been told I come off too bold, too opinionated, too much, too black. Imani smiled. That same small, sharp, dangerous smile she gave herself on the night she was rejected. She walked around the table, sat across from the girl, looked her straight in the eye and said, "You're not too bold, you're not too much, you're not too anything. You're exactly who I was waiting for." The girl exhaled, shoulders dropped. And in that moment, Imani knew she had become the person she needed all those years ago. Because the truth is, justice isn't just about making it, it's about making space, and making sure the next version of you never has to ask if she belongs. That evening, Imani passed, the front lobby, saw her reflection in the glass doors. Not just a boss, not just a title, but a blueprint. For what's possible, for what comes next. She pulled out her phone, typed a short message. To the girl they said was too black for the job. "Look at you now." Then she pressed send, to herself, as a reminder, as a declaration, as a legacy. Music swells. Warm, full, resonant. The sound of the world shifting quietly, permanently. Voiceover whisper, closing line. They said she didn't fit, but she wasn't made to fit. She was made to lead and... Now the room looks like her. Fade out.